Good morning, church. That's loud. Good morning, church. Awesome to be with you here today. It's good to see you all. I'm going to start with an announcement. I took a quick poll at the end of our service last Sunday and said, hey, if we can throw together a Friday evening service as an opportunity, as another pathway for us to sort of go deeper and do some Holy Spirit encounter stuff with a guest speaker, would you come to that? And enough hands went up that I went ahead and booked our guest speaker. And so this Friday, we are doing what we're calling a deeper life service. And if you have history with the Christian Missionary Alliance, you'll know that a deeper life service is kind of our language and our vocabulary, and it's an opportunity to sort of be in the presence of God and let Him have His way. And if it's been like a long time since you've been in an environment where you had that opportunity, this one is for you. There's more details in the email that went out over the weekend. I will just say personally, pastorally, I hope and pray and wish for all hands on deck, that all of us can be here. Childcare will be provided. We'll probably do like a pajama type theme for the kids since it's a 7 o'clock service. But please do everything in your power to be here on Friday. It should be a really, 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 really good time. So let's move into the book of Mark. We hit chapter 11 today, and I'm going to preface this. We hit chapter 11, which means normally I would start with verse 1 in chapter 11. But this passage, verses 1 through 11, about Jesus coming into Jerusalem to get started everything that happens in Jerusalem, the events that would lead to the cross. Well, I kind of preached this passage about a year ago. It was Palm Sunday a year ago. I'm going to refer you to that sermon. It was called The Errors of Holy Week, which may actually refer to my sermon. But if you want to cover this passage, find it on YouTube, on our church page on YouTube, and check it out. We dug in deeply there. Here's the big picture, is that Jesus came as a king who would wage peace and overthrow war. The expectation for a Messiah, for a king, was that he was going to come in triumphantly, guns blazing, taking down his enemies, and that's not what he did. For more of a memory jog, we did a little art. So here's the artwork we walked through. We did this comparison between how a Roman emperor, triumphant from the conquests of war, would enter into a city with war horses and chariots and weapons and an entourage, compared to how Jesus would enter a city humble on a donkey, making a sign of peace, reverence, and holy. Altogether different. So hopefully that jogs your memory a little bit. This is the stuff that we were talking about last Palm Sunday. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to jump to the next story. But before I jump to the next story, I want to give you a little reminder of where we started. About a year ago now, last September, Mark 1:1. The theme of that conversation was about this idea of rewilding. Rewilding is the word that people are using to become reacquainted with nature, whether that is camping and hiking, just sort of how in the industrialized world we've lost our sense of the magic of being out in nature, of being connected to the earth, and people are trying to learn to rewild. Well, we talked about rewilding Jesus. We were going to do this whole book of Mark with some goals in mind. The goals for this series were to immerse ourselves in the activity of the gospel story, to get uncomfortably challenged by Jesus' way of life and call to discipleship, and to be introduced or reintroduced with a wild and untamed Jesus. This is a slide right from that first message. So it's good to sort of remind ourselves, why did we get this started and how are we doing with this? And I introduce this because Mark chapter 11, we meet a new side of Jesus, a new angle of Jesus. From this point on, there's no more healing stories. There's really no more of like Jesus standing up for the oppressed. Well, there is, but not as in terms of a specific person. In chapter 11, we meet Jesus the prophet. And Jesus the prophet is a wild man. Jesus the prophet makes us really uncomfortable. And with that said, I'm going to entrust myself to you, that as you sort of receive what's being said and dialoguing with yourself, with God, you're not passive, right? You're weighing and thinking and praying and discerning as words are being spoken. I'm entrusting myself to you that you will trust that I am heading where the text is going. That I am heading where the text is going. And if there's like follow-up conversations and anything like that, I just want to do it with the Bible open. Is that fair? That if you have some like reservations about what's about to go on, that it's like, the only way you'll hurt my feelings is if you say, what you were doing was not in the text. That's the only way my feelings will get hurt as a pastor. Everything else is up for grabs. All right, was that like a spicy enough introduction? Wasn't intentional, but prophet Jesus. When you do prophet Jesus, it gets a little wild. So here we go. We're going to jump in chapter 11, verse 12. Not only are we dealing with prophet Jesus, we're dealing with hungry prophet Jesus. Yeah, hungry and a little angry. Bad combo. The next day, as they were leaving Bethany, Jesus was hungry. Seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to find out if it had any fruit. That thing looks really good down the road. I want to go get some of that. I'm hungry. When he reached it, he found nothing but leaves because it was not the season for figs. Then he said to the tree, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And his disciples heard him say it. What's going on? Why is Jesus being mean to a tree for not doing what it's not supposed to do in this time? Well, remember, he's hungry, and he saw this from far away. Maybe Jesus didn't know it wasn't fig-producing season time, or maybe he did, but he shows up, he arrives, he has an expectation. This thing looks good from far away, but when he shows up, it doesn't look so good. The profound I had as I was meditating from deep into the recesses of my childhood. The great Clueless quote here. Clueless. 90s? Alicia Silverstone? Come on. Do you know the quote? Here's the conversation. You probably can't read it. Here's the conversation. Her friend approaches and says, "Do you think that girl's pretty?" "She's a full-on Monet." What's a Monet? It's like the painting, see? From far away, it's okay, but up close, it's a big old mess. Which is funny to a kid, but I realized as an adult, this almost ruined me on art, because I love Impressionism. Love it. Love it. In fact, if we go to the Museum of Modern Art and we sit in the water lily's room and you speak while we're sitting in that room, we can't be friends anymore. This is not Monet slander. This is not Monet slander, but this is the human experience of thinking, oh, that looks really good. You hear people talk about this when it comes to like Hollywood or a big like destination. Like, I can't wait to check that out and see that and be there. And then you show up to Hollywood and it's like a big old mess on top of some stars on the sidewalk. So Jesus is kind of having, it's a bit of a Monet experience with this fig tree. And the writer goes out of his way to say the disciples heard what Jesus said to the fig tree. Because we're going to have an introduction experience with the fig tree, and we're going to have a conclusion experience with the fig tree. But something really important happens in the middle. But just know, the disciples heard Jesus be mean to the fig tree. File that away. Verse 15. On reaching Jerusalem, we don't know if Jesus has eaten yet, Jesus entered the temple courts and began driving out those who were buying and selling there. He overturned tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves and would not allow anyone to carry merchandise through the temple courts. If you have any church background, any Bible background, this big story is like, here's the one time Jesus got really mad. And here's the one time when it's okay to be righteously angry. And then whenever we ourselves perceive that we are righteously angry and we are right, we defend ourselves by saying, yeah, but Jesus flipped over tables. Like every time we ever act out in anger, we are like Jesus in that moment, over and over and over. It never goes wrong. It's a beautiful cliche to draw on. What's really going on? It's the temple. We're in Judaism right here. We're in Second Temple Judaism. We're in the 1st century, and there was a system at play. People are coming and worshiping at the temple. Worship entailed bringing a sacrifice. Worship also entailed a whole bunch of other things depending on whether you were an insider or an outside, whether you were a Jewish local, whether you were a Gentile outsider. Some people got to go way in. Some people had to sort of stay in the outer courtyard. If you were coming from far away and you were bringing a bird, a dove, something to sacrifice for the priest to take on and to kill and to offer up to God. Well, if you're traveling dozens and dozens and maybe hundreds of miles and you're bringing a dove, you're bringing a calf, you're bringing a lamb, well, that dove or calf or lamb is gonna get beat up. It's in the desert. It's in the Middle East. There's people that are going to try to steal that from you. There's animals that are going to come and try to take a bite out of that thing. It's going to get dusty. It's going to get dirty. It's going to get nicked up. So by the time you would show up from your long travel to worship at the temple, at the place, well, your sacrifice isn't looking so good. And there were people at the door. And they would say, man, your sacrifice is looking a little rusty. Like, couple bucks, swap that out, brand new dove, right out of the cage, no nicks, no flaws, no anything, couple bucks, and that was sort of how the exchange went. Now that's kind of a cynical take on that, and admittedly, but it seems like Jesus is kind of in a cynical place because he's flipping stuff over, he's sort of making a point, and it would be easy to kind of camp out and use this passage as a capitalistic critique, an economic critique. And I believe that's fair. I believe there's a consumeristic thing going on here that Jesus is critiquing how buying and selling and religion and spirituality are too much intertwined and intermingled, and you had to be a person of means in order to rightly worship, and there were arbiters and judges of that to make sure you were doing that, and that is not good. But we can't stay there. There's more. There's more going on than just a capitalistic, consumeristic critique on worship. Jesus is up to bigger things, because what Jesus does is he essentially shuts this whole thing down. He overturns tables of the money changers, so there's no more buying and selling. He's not even allowing anyone to walk around with anything, any merchandise, anything. He shuts the whole temple system down. That means if there's no animals being bought and sold, there's nothing to sacrifice, and if there's nothing to sacrifice, the priests have nothing to do, and if the priests have nothing to do, well, they kind of like made their money and would even eat some of the sacrifices that were left over for them, so they're not eating, and the whole busybody temple experience goes quiet. He shuts it down. People's livelihoods are at stake, and Jesus shuts it down. And once it gets quiet, and once he shuts down the temple system that would operate 24/7 all the time, he taught them. And as he taught them, he said, "Is it not written, my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations? But you have made it a den of robbers." Jesus is quoting Jeremiah 7. You want to get into Jeremiah 7 because Jeremiah 7 is very, very hairy. Jeremiah was a prophet that was always getting into trouble because he was always critiquing the religious establishment on behalf of God. So for us to know what Jesus is really up to, big picture, we're going to get into Jeremiah 7. Here's what Jeremiah 7 says about the temple and about the temple system. Jeremiah, the prophet, says, "Do not trust in deceptive words and say, 'This is the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord.' You can't mess with the temple. It's the temple. You can't critique the temple. It's where God lives. You can't critique that. If you really change your ways and your actions and deal with each other justly, if you do not oppress the foreigner, the fatherless, or the widow, and do not shed innocent blood in this place, and if you do not follow other gods to your own harm, then I will let you live in this place, in the land I gave your ancestors forever and ever." There's a lot of indictments. Jeremiah is saying the religious leaders who are in charge of the temple, who are in charge of the place where God lives, according to their theology, they're doing it all wrong. They're doing it all wrong. But look, you are trusting in deceptive words that are worthless. Comparing words to action. Prophets always point this stuff out. Your words say one thing, your actions say another. This temple thing, it's beautiful, it's stunning, it's jaw-dropping. You can see it from miles away. But when you get close, when you get inside, it's a big old mess. A big old mess. The prophet is critiquing God's people. The prophet is critiquing spiritual leaders. If we updated this for our context, we would say the prophet is critiquing pastors and Christians. That's what we would say. And the words are so harsh. So harsh. Verse 9. "Will you steal and murder, commit adultery and perjury, burn incense to Baal and follow other gods you have not known, and then come and stand before me in this house which bears my name, and say, we are safe. Safe to do all these detestable things? Has this house which bears my name become a den of robbers to you? But I have been watching, declares the Lord. We're following the text. Why is God so hard on his people and on his leaders? Like, isn't there enough other stuff going on in a world full of evil and manipulative people? Like, God, there's a whole lot of other people that need correction. Why are you dealing with us so harshly? Because you bear my name. And when you do this stuff in my name, it's worse. It's worse than the people who do that stuff, but at least leave me out of it. Okay, full disclosure. In our political climate, what's going on? You've got two big parties. They're both pretty messed up. One of them tends to do their messed up stuff in the name of God, and the other one couldn't really be bothered with God. When I tend to critique in-house. Like, yeah, there's a lot of bad stuff, a lot of evil stuff going on. But God wants us to deal with us first. So doing things in God's name and saying good words about God and doing things in his name and doing them in churches, but then not living out those ethics and morals in real everyday life, really, really bad. It's about people. Deal with each other justly. Do not oppress the foreigner, the fatherless, the widow, the disenfranchised, the hurting, the poor. The big story over the last week or so was human beings being used as political props because of the immigration debates, being used as props and being ferried over far away to make a point so a bunch of people can laugh and say, ha, got him. How do you like that one? All right. Okay. Maybe the laws are messed up. Maybe a whole lot of change has to happen. But you oppressed the foreigner. You objectified a person who bears the image of God. And you did that in the name of God, having press conferences at churches. We're following the text. Has this house which bears my name become a den of robbers to you? But I have been watching, declares the Lord. That's Jesus quoting Jeremiah 7. I want to take an even further look and say, like, den of robbers, den of robbers. Why call them robbers? You could have called them a whole bunch of other things. Why robbers? Like, they're actually, we should maybe assume that they're always taking advantage of people. Why a robber? Jesus, what are you talking about? Okay, like last week, I'm going to show my work a little bit here. What's a robber? The word that Jesus used is lestes, a robber, a bandit, a highwayman, one who seizes by violence, violent overtones. Second definition, a political insurrectionist, revolutionary, rebel who favors the use of force, another violent overtone. It's from a Greek New Testament dictionary. Another one, I had to screenshot this because I was not typing all this out. I'm in debt to be able to decipher this stuff, okay? Robber, highwayman, bandit. Definition number 2, revolutionary, insurrectionist, guerrilla. Overtones of violence in both one. On that previous slide, the writer there goes out of his way to say, this is one who seizes by violence, in contrast to a thief who uses stealth. A kleptes is someone who uses stealth and will pick your pocket. Kleptomaniac, someone who steals, someone who thieves, they do it silently. A leistes is someone who's just going to come at you and take what is yours. What is Jesus doing? Why is he using this language? Why is he being so harsh? Because the people in the temple system weren't just manipulating people. The temple had become the central place where it seems like people were getting together and saying, it's time to get these Romans the heck out of here. It's time to get these Gentiles out of our land. That's so they were manipulating people on the front end, but on the back end, they were sort of scheming about how we can overtake things and get back into control. I'm not being cheeky or provocative here, but the right sociological term would be they were Jewish nationalists. Jewish nationalists. I'm not forcing that one. That would be who these people were acting as. People who had political aims, were using spirituality as a cover for their political aims. And let's take this country back for God. That's what people like that say. Jesus is using this language on purpose. You're not just quiet thieves. You were direct, violent people. Jesus just came into Jerusalem not on a war horse, but on a donkey. Not bringing violence, but bringing peace. So Jesus, here's a summary statement. Jesus is confronting the dark spiritual powers that are operating under the guise of authentic faith. These powers keep outsiders away, they objectify those in need, and they profit off of, they take advantage of the pious. Well-meaning followers of God, they take advantage of. And these powers are plotting a larger revolution, violent overthrow in the name of God. That's why Jeremiah's words are so harsh to the people of God who are using God's name to take advantage of other people or to further their own power and influence. It's not a game. It's not a game. It's not something to score points about, to make jokes about, to argue about. It's Jesus' perspective, or it's not. Or it's not. Thankfully, Jesus is also plotting a revolution. But first, we got to get back to figs. Because Jeremiah 7 is this harsh stuff, den of robbers. Jesus quotes Jeremiah 8. We're going to talk about figs. We're going to talk about figs. You see what Jesus is doing? He's setting something up with figs. He's going in on them about the den of robbers. Jeremiah talks about the den of robbers, and he does this thing with figs. Jesus knows what he's doing. Jesus is taking the whole of the prophetic tradition, putting it on, wearing it, and saying, this is happening right now, not just 1,000 years ago during the first temple. This is happening now. Get it together. Jeremiah 8 about figs. From the least to the greatest, all are greedy for gain. Prophets and priests alike, I look in the mirror, prophets and priests alike, all practice deceit. They dress the wounds of my people as though it were not serious. Peace, peace, they say, when there is no peace. When people express genuine pain, and then that pain is saying, oh, no, it's not so bad. No, the statistics don't tell that story, and that pain is neglected. creates more division. They dress the wound of my people as though it were not serious. We're following the text. Peace, peace, they say when there is no peace. Are they ashamed of their detestable conduct? No, they have no shame at all. They do not even know how to blush. So they will fall among the fallen. They will be brought down when they are punished, says the Lord. I will take away their harvest, declares the Lord. There will be no grapes on the vine. There will be no figs on the tree, and their leaves will wither. What I have given them will be taken from them. That's the context of what Jesus is up to. Back to Mark. The chief priests and the teachers of the law heard this and began looking for a way to kill him. You take away my livelihood, you take away my system, you take away everything I've worked for, you take away my influence, yeah, we're going to kill you. For they feared him because the whole crowd was amazed at his teaching. When evening came, Jesus and his disciples went out of the city. In the morning, assuming Jesus had a good meal in his belly by now, in the morning, as they went along, they saw the fig tree withered from the roots. Peter remembered. The disciples heard what Jesus said, and Peter remembered. Rabbi, look, the fig tree you cursed has withered. Parabolic. The fig on one side, alive. The fig on the other side, the tree on the other side, dead. In the middle, this whole temple experience, the whole religious system. Why did Jesus curse the fig tree? Not about the fig tree. He wasn't hangry. It's about the temple. It's about religion. It's how people were acting in the name of God that had nothing to do with God. There's enough out there to critique. Jesus had his run-in with Herod, as godless as they come. Other side of the aisle, Herod. John the Baptist went toe-to-toe with Herod and got his head cut off for prophetically critiquing Herod. There was plenty of space to prophetically critique Herod, to critique secular, to critique modernism, to critique postmodernism. There's space for it. It's there. But the stuff that happens in God's name among God's people is the first priority. That's the stuff to root out first. There will always be a Herod. There will always be a Herod to contend with. But if we get so focused on Herod that we don't clean up the temple, our faith is a big old mess. A big old mess. This is the number one reason why 16 to 30-year-olds are abandoning the church. Look around. If people want to experience the church, if people see something a mile down the road, they see our new flag banners out there, they go, maybe they're different. Maybe there's some hope there. Maybe there's some healing I can find there. Is that what they're going to find? Or are they going to walk in on a conversation condemning someone? Are they going to see one bumper sticker that turns them off? Are they going to see the opposite bumper sticker that turns them off? Side note, I don't know why anyone who identifies with Jesus would want to be identified by a political party first. Like, Jesus, just do Jesus party. I'm like pro-Christian bumper stickers. I never have been. But if we could cover up the rest of them with Jesus stuff, I'm there. Why not be a Jesus person first? Jesus' response to the fig tree you cursed has withered. Jesus, man. Jesus, you just shut down the temple. Jesus, you just cursed the fig tree. The fig tree's dead. You're telling me that the temple is dead? You're telling me that our whole system is dead? You're telling me the thing I grew up with is dead? Jesus, what are you doing, man? Jesus says, have faith in God. God. Have faith in God. God, not a system. God, not a pastor, preacher, priest. God, not a politician. God, not you being clever and winning an argument. God. Truly I tell you, if anyone says to this mountain, and I believe he's referring to the Temple Mount, the actual temple, the Temple Mount. If anyone says to this mountain, go throw yourself into the sea, and does not doubt in their heart, but believes that what they say will happen, it will be done for them. Okay, as a leader, I need that. I need that. As a believer, I need that. So Jesus, are you saying you did the fig thing, you did the temple thing, you shut it down, you critiqued it, now it's dead, but now what do we point to? What's our anchor? What's our rock? Are you saying if we point at that old, outdated religious system, if we point at that judgmental system, if we point at that dysfunction and unhealth, if we point at that thing that has been co-opted by politics, if we point at the thing that has left people hurting and abused, if we point at that thing and say, go throw yourself into the sea, and we don't doubt it, it'll happen. If we have faith in God, if we center you, are you saying people will get it? They'll see you're better, you're best, you're above it all. They'll see it. I think so. I think there's hope. I'm tempted every day to be hopeless about our social situation. How can I talk about Jesus when Jesus' name gets used for everything else? But this gives me hope. Therefore, I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. And when you stand praying, if you hold anything against anyone, forgive them, so that your Father in heaven may forgive you your sins. Not only can we point at something that needs to die and might die, not only can we point to something good and have hope that it'll take center stage, we can let go of our cynicism too. I, as a Christian leader, don't have to hold anger and resentment towards other Christian spaces, places, and faces that I think are doing harm. I can let that go too. I can forgive. And I want to be forgiven. So Jesus is a revolutionary too. Jesus is a revolutionary too. These guys in the temple plotting some stuff, they thought they were revolutionaries. Nope. Jesus is a revolutionary. Not by violent oppression, not by demonizing outsiders. What does Jesus as a revolutionary look like? It comes through prayer and forgiveness. There's a lot more in that last paragraph we can go through. But let's get the big picture. Prayer and forgiveness. We all need a filter, a media filter, a news filter, a conversation filter like never, ever, 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 ever before. I think souls are on the line. If Our filter was prayer and forgiveness. Okay, someone is claiming something in the name of God. Someone is speaking something in a church. Someone wants something from me because they think I align with them because they're claiming the name of God. Filter is what they are doing, keeping with prayer and forgiveness. Is what they are doing, keeping with prayer and forgiveness. Are they using people? That's not prayer and forgiveness. Are they objectifying people? That's not prayer and forgiveness. Are they treating their opponents respectfully because they're made in the image of God? That's prayer and forgiveness. Filter. Jesus is a revolutionary too. And this one is hard. And this one is ugly. And this one is tense. But we're following the text. I don't want a score point. I want to follow the text and be a Jesus guy. I want us to follow the text and be Jesus people. I think about judgment a lot, particularly because there's this Jeremiah stuff and there's this spiritual leader stuff, and holy cow, I signed up for something that I'm going to have to give an account about one day. So right now, I've only got it narrowed down to, if I have to stand before God and God said, what did you do? Right now, all I've got is, I tried my best to be a Jesus person and help develop people in their being Jesus people. That's all I got. The rest is for you to filter. I want to be Jesus people. I want to reach people. I want to have the hard conversations, but I want to do it with the Jesus filter. Jesus stirred it up, and he shut it down, and he knew it would get him killed. But he ended it by saying, have faith in God, pray, forgive. Have faith in God, pray, forgive. Is there a higher way to live? Have faith in God, pray, forgive. It's the way of Jesus. Let's pray. Jesus, I don't know if I can speak for anyone else. Maybe we surrender. We are inundated 24/7 with heaviness, with people accusing other people, people using other people, people telling people that they have to be on one side or another side in order to follow you the right way. And I have nothing left. I feel like I have nothing left. Jesus, we can't ignore it, but we can center you in it. So will you help us be people that have faith in you and pray and forgive? And may we pass that test. And may this community be a community that passes that test so that people walk up on us. What they see from far away is what they get in person.